Hey there, welcome to the saperis Live interviews where we talk to Google Workspace experts and users. And today I'm super happy to have Finn with us. So let me get Finn up on stage here. Finn, super happy to have you here with us. First of all, let's start with what is the correct pronunciation of your name?
Well, it is actually close. It is Finn, and thank you so much for having me here. So Finn is actually pronounced in the same way most of the world.
And what about the last name?
Well, I'm trying to not go into English pronunciation of it, but it is Krusholm, and in Danish,
Krusholm.
Krusholm. Yeah,
Krusholm. Okay, that's almost
yeah,
like German, actually.
it is. It is.
And you just mentioned Danish, so in that case, you are from Denmark and you live and work there.
I am from Denmark. I was originally born in Greenland, but that is also part of Denmark. So
Okay.
I am Danish. Yes.
And where do you work in Denmark?
In Copenhagen, and have been living most of my life in Copenhagen, actually. Yeah.
So I've visited the city and I must say I was very impressed. So nice city, not bad. Now, a
Thank you.
little bit more about your business background. Where do you work and what do you do?
Well, I do work in the company Tricent, actually called Tricent Security Group, and my work is as a CEO and founder of the company, and I've been with Tricent for 3 years now.
Oh, okay, very nice. And
Mhm.
what does Tricent do? What do I have to think of when I hear Tricent?
Well, Tricent is all about compliance in file sharing, external file sharing within Google Workspace. So it's a very narrow, very focused service, a SaaS service for any size company that wants to mitigate all of the files being shared outside the Google Workspace domain.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Before we dive a bit more into Google Drive, Tricent, and also security, I would like to know from you. Let's go back down memory lane. I don't know if you remember, when was the first time you came in contact with what we now know as Google Workspace?
Oh yeah, that's a long time ago because that was back in 2007, 2008. And actually, a good friend of mine, he asked me if I wanted to join a company that was recently founded, and they were supposed to be a Google G Suite partner. Actually, it was not called G Suite at that time; it was called Google Apps. I was just like, well, what is that? Is that some kind of search? Is that some kind of paid media? What is it? And then I found that Google was launching a competitive service to at that time the Exchange server and the Office stack.
hmm And what
Mhm.
were your first thoughts when you checked it out?
Well, at that time, as now, Gmail as for privates was very big, and it was succeeding Hotmail at that time, and even Yahoo Mail, which were very big both in Europe and US. So I knew the Gmail service and loved it. After having a hard time starting Googling back in 2001, it felt easy to use Gmail instead of all of the other services. So I was positive, but I was like, yeah, but can that really be used within companies?
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it did prove that it can be used within companies, and that's also the reason why we're talking here today. Now, before we look a bit more at Tricent, the compliance tool itself, tell me, what is the story behind the tool? I mean, you didn't just, I guess, one morning wake up and said, we're going to build TCT. So, what was the initial spark behind that?
Yeah, and actually, I've founded quite a number of companies, and this is my favorite, both because it's succeeding and I'm in it right now, but actually also because this company was founded out of a customer pain, meaning that we had a very large customer in Sweden, a bank that is now international and growing very fast, and they came with the pain of having shared files externally from the company domain, and that the bank authorities had found that you're actually sharing data that you're not in control of. And also, the board of the bank had noticed that in a report from the bank authorities. So it came as a request for consultancy, for insights. And then over time, it became the platform and the SaaS service as we have now.
And I mean, one customer request means, doesn't necessarily mean that a company like you would actually go out and create this tool. So I'm guessing
Mm.
that you saw that there's market need out there for that.
Yeah, we did because we understood that this is a pain that many companies may have, both within Google Workspace and other related products, and we also could see it on our own behavior with shared files. And of course, we checked that with other larger customers, but it was kind of very clear from the beginning that this might be something that we can grow as a business area. But we thought from the beginning that that would be as consultancy or implementing a series of GAM scripts or even perhaps a little database. But we realized, analyzing the problem together with the bank and their system administrators and compliance people, that this was huge. It was a large number of files, users, and the complexity of both getting administrative insights, actually executing on these insights was difficult. So that's where we started, and then after like half a year and just around, we took the decision to carve this out as a separate product and build a business around it. We also found that taking a stand on which files should be shared is not possible to do from central hold and from administrative users.
Mhm.
You need to involve the end users. And that was really where we found the key for saying, okay, this is actually something that really can go big.
Mhm. So
Mm.
from what I understand, with this customer, you were kind of like able to build the MVP and see, okay, this works, but also talking with other customers, you saw, they also are interested in such a solution, which is great when you're launching a new product. So good that that worked out that well. But,
Yeah.
one might say, if I get to play the devil's advocate, but hey, there's so many Google Workspace, add-on tools, securities, these and that, why Tricent compliance tool? Why should I look into that?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I think that there are two angles to this that are very important to stress. And the first one is that throughout the last 5 years, 4.5 years, Google has really been improving their game on security. Not just as Google itself, but actually making security available and cybersecurity mitigation available to both administrators and security people within companies and even consultants. So the focus on cybersecurity generally has increased, but it's also in Google, it has really been a huge topic. And
Mhm,
the other part is that I have a background as a Google reseller. So I have seen my fair share of hundreds of third-party tools that you could upsell, resell, and improve really the daily work for a lot of customers. And by that we knew how to evaluate this and see, can we fit in? Is this actually something that is needed to be pushed, or will it be a pull from the market? Is it a necessity to have this? And we actually estimated that this was very close to having backup of your solution, because this is really something that can bring a lot of damage, not just on the personal information security, but also on the company confidential information that is shared outside the domains.
mhm. Now, obviously, without touching on any sales numbers, let us a little bit know what was the reception of this tool when you launched this? How did
Yeah.
companies react to this?
Well, we were very aware. We have built tools like this before in other companies, so we were very aware that we had to do a graduated launch of this tool, both to have the right market fit, the right product fit for the customer pains faced out there, to get the insights and some feedback on what couldn't we improve before launching this for real in the market. So we selected a handful of customers, but also to do the scale that you need to do, handling millions of users and up to billions of files, is also something that really needs the right architecture and the right rollout, including data regions and data security across the Google ecosystem that we're using for delivering the service. But the good part was that when we approached a series of customers or potential customers with the tool, the reaction was immediately, sign us up. We want this. We have had no pushback on pricing or on the relevance. What we only see is the timing and the resources needed at customer side for actually taking the solution. But it has been a very positive and warm welcome to the market for us, we must say.
I know, at least for a time, and maybe also now, that you offer kind of like demos, so that you install, try some compliance tool on the domain of the company, and then walk them through it and give them some insights. What are the typical insights the company gained through this demo that they didn't have before?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that just basically end users cannot see what they have shared outside the organization in one central place. They cannot look up who have I shared what with. The same goes more or less for the administrative users of Google Workspace. So the first thing we do when we do a POC, or what we call a data ingestion, is actually a very simple move where we kind of do the household and the hygiene of finding, okay, how many files are actually shared out there? How many of these files are on shared drives? How many of these files are on my drives? And which users are most active in this? And how big is the problem? And then we do a short analysis for actually setting the scene for what can you mitigate immediately. Can you set up a policy removing big parts of the problem, like in a snap? And what will be needed on a longer run to be the mitigation of users sharing data every day, because they are, and at least during to COVID-19, everybody is collaborating and sharing data all the time. So it's kind of a two-step insights that we give to customers, and it's not really something that requires a lot of resources. It's actually only half an hour, no matter the size of the company, to get these insights and to have a status of the situation.
Hmm. And what approach has Tricent taken when it comes to acting on this insight? So I've seen, security tools where you as the admin can just say, okay, unshare everything and that's,
Yeah.
call it quits. We're safe now. What approach did Tricent take for this?
Well, as a elaboration on your question, actually, we've seen a lot of organizations that have decided not to enable sharing outside the domain simply for security measures. So we've seen a lot of that. But the thing with our tool is that you get the insights and you can do the mitigation of this problem step by step, and you can go for the users that you want to and the data that you want to mitigate, and not just do it for everything. So what we are very focused at is to do the advisory of how do we implement this tool with a best practice that gives the best result without harassing the end users. That is really what we contribute with together with the tool.
Hmm. What I've seen from using Tricent, the compliance tool in our organization, and what I like is that you're putting, or you can, if you want to, if an organization that wants to, you can put the user in the driver's seat. I
Mhm.
especially like that you can send out emails remembering people you've sharing this documents with this people, go ahead and unshare, or maybe prolong this sharing. So I think that's a very wise strategy instead of the other way, kind of just like blank slate, we're wiping out all of the sharing permissions, which, certain documents might need to be shared for a longer
Oh
time
yes.
period.
Oh yes, and this
Definitely.
is this is a natural part of your conduct of your business on all user levels, from management to anyone working with sharing data and collaborating outside the organization. And this is not just strange and foreigners to the company that you're working with. This is also internal hired consultants. It's daughter companies, sister companies. There's a lot
Hmm.
of stuff going on that nobody really thinks of, and therefore we also granulated the service exactly to be end user driven as much as possible. And normally we only see bulk unsharings from administrative part that makes sense in a historical perspective. So for
Hmm.
example, setting up the service so all sharings outside the organization that are more than a year old, they should automatically be unshared. That's something we see quite often. Also, shared data, shared files that haven't been touched by anyone for 6 months can also automatically be unshared. And that's kind of a routine and a hygiene fact that really helps the mitigation of the problem in a big scale from the beginning. So
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
combination needs to be there. You need to involve the end users, yes, but on the historical data, that would be too much to ask for.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair point. Now,
Yeah.
what if a company says, "Hey, this tool looks really cool. We would like to use it." How does a company get started with the Tricent compliance tool?
Well, there are two ways. Of course, they depending on the nature of the company and how fast they are at pulling in tools like this, they can actually just onboard themselves very easily, and the tool comes with a set of best practices. So they will only have a small guidance as a support. For larger organizations, we often see that we do an intro of the tool, then we do the data ingestion. It takes kind of an hour to do the data ingestion and then explain what are we looking at here, what are the factors, and then after that actually the system is onboarded, so it can immediately start with the best practice settings that we apply or with the configuration that the company wants. And what we've had a lot of focus on for the last year is really how can we do this without requiring too many resources for the administrators and the compliance people in organizations, because nobody has the time for this. And of course, we want to do an easy and fast onboarding and have some sales, no doubt about that. But we need to do it in a way where people can see themselves and their resources intact, even though introducing this. So it is actually very easy to first get insights and then to run the tool. And you can even do it on different groups and different OUs in the organization. So you can start out quietly and then you can expand from there.
Yeah, which is great. Well, because you can maybe, test it. How is it in a certain, I don't know, as you say, organizational unit, and then roll it out to the rest of the organization. And
Indeed.
how is it for resellers? Are they in the loop somehow too? Or, if they say, hey, this would be a super tool for my customers.
Well, indeed, and we have actually signed up a significant number of resellers the last year. We started the reseller program last autumn, and we cover most of the significant resellers in Europe and US today, and also to some extent in Australia. And we even see resellers from Africa and Middle East joining us now. So this is a reseller or partner first tool. Even though we meet customers directly, of course, we get contacted by customers, and we have a lot of marketing activities, growth hacking going. We're always trying to put in the partner in between. So when we meet customers directly, we ask them who is your partner, and then if they're a partner, of course, we co-work, or we will actually contact the partner if we don't know them or if they're not a reseller already. So we try to go through partners. We believe that that local interaction and that trusted relationship with the partner and the reseller and the customer is really important to join instead of trying to avoid it.
So that means that Tricent.com should be the next URL that the people listening to type in, no matter if you're an organization or if you're a reseller, because that's where you will get further information.
Indeed, it is. It
Okay.
is, and it should be very explanatory. The
Yeah,
team has done a great job
it's
for
true.
providing insights on that.
I really like your website, and it
Thank
explains
you.
very well what the tools does, and how to get in contact with you, which is super important. Now,
Thank you.
let's look a little bit at more of the security aspect of Google Drive in general. Now, you hold a
Yeah.
cybersecurity certificate from the Harvard University, so I'm guessing you know two or three things about security. Now, let's what in your opinion is the biggest risk when it comes to security for companies using Google Workspace or Google Drive specifically?
Yeah. And of course, I have to do a disclaimer on that because there's one answer to that. We always have to say, us working with security, and that is, of course, the end users. There's no,
Mhm.
there's no such thing as end users to harm the security of a company. So of course, that is the obvious answer, and that will count for any kind of tool, at least an online tool. But besides that, when we're looking at workspace specifically, the thing is that Google has really done very good efforts throughout the years of securing workspace. And if you use workspace correctly, and if you do the best practice that Google applies, it is probably, and in my humble opinion, the best framework ever built, because they are really good at it. Even when you are an engineer and working low level on the security parts. But the thing is that if you don't apply the security metrics and the security best practice correctly, you will actually be vulnerable in ways you don't know of. So it is,
Mhm.
from my point of view, the biggest risk with Google Workspace is misuse of the product. A lot of companies that even have gone for the Google Enterprise Plus, which is with the big security measures of security center and all the nitty bitty parts of the security setup, most customers don't know how to actually implement it or don't have the resources, and that is a huge risk because then you believe you're secure, but you might not be. Also, for specifics, the drive stream tool is really something that we, as when I was working at a reseller, we tried to get companies not to use it because it is a dangerous way into actually interacting with the company behind the
Hmm.
scenes, and if it's not used correctly or put by the wrong way by the end users, that is really dangerous. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong in even in the very secure and very hard shell of Google. And therefore, I believe that the answer to your next question is what to do about that. And that is really to have some specialized resellers. There are some very, very good resellers out there with security departments that can do the advice, do the best practice. And first of all, even though Google is secure and they have all the tools, any company caring about cybersecurity, which means all companies, hopefully, they should have a security review of their Google Workspace instance separately done, not as part of any general insights to the cybersecurity of a company, but a specific review from a partner reseller that knows what they're talking about.
Hmm.
I've,
So, yeah, no,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, and actually, I've seen some pretty bad cases, even from customers that are investing heavily and have very big security departments. They have a score in our old matrix from my former position of below 50%, and they should
Hmm.
be at least at a 80 or 90%. So that is important to implement the tools that you're paying for.
Hmm.
That's the
So
short version.
it's interesting because I think it's multifaceted. You need a reseller who, also um, consults well in implementing the Google Workspace migration, because usually they are migrating from something else to Google
Indeed,
Workspace.
indeed.
You need admins who know what they're doing, but you also need to educate the users, and that's where like people like me come in, to teach the users how to use these tools, what
Yeah,
things to be aware of. Just today, actually, I was having a call with a partner, and I had to share some basic knowledge about Google Drive, although they have been using it in their organization, but they didn't understand quite the concept of sharing and having other people owning documents, vital documents to them, and all these things. And you notice there is still a need out there that people get to know these tools well, because as you say, they're secure, but if you use them in the wrong way, then you're opening up the door for any, unlucky things to happen. So
indeed.
that's.
And yeah, I
Mhm.
fully agree. And the thing is, also that's why I mentioned the end users as the first and most threatening thing, because it is the end user behavior, and for end users to understand what is right and what is wrong, they really need to be educated. They need to not just utilize the features for collaboration and productivity, but also to get an understanding of how to behave within this magic tool of Google Workspace. And
Mhm.
now, I have had a talk with you before where you really had a very good walkthrough of the best practice for using Google Drive and the do's and don'ts, and some very good samples also of the end user situations, both on a customer um, segment perspective, but also by the role of the end users. And it is so important to have that aligned. And I would even say that it's more important than setting up your Google tenant the right way, because it is
Mhm.
secure. Of course, you need two-factor, otherwise you're really in trouble. But besides that, end user education, I fully agree. That is the most important part.
Yeah, yeah, I agree on that too. Now, the first time I came in contact with Google Workspace or G Suite or whatever it was back then, was about 6 years ago, when I ditched my corporate job and went working for a startup. And ever since, whenever I was at a startup or also at a software agency, working as a developer, we always use Google Workspace. And also, if you read about this, a lot of startups start out with Google Workspaces. It's super easy to implement. You don't need to bother with any infrastructure in anyone's cellar or garage. You just get started. So that's
Mm,
great.
mm,
But What if, let's say, a CIO of a bank, let's not take a Swiss bank, let's take a Danish bank this time. A Danish bank, is talking to you, and they're maybe, now hybrid working models, they're evaluating how they would like to work in the future. And Google Workspace is one of the productivity suites they're looking at. What about if that, CEO, let's say Jane, the CIO says, I'm a little bit skeptical about this.
Mm.
What are your thoughts on this, Finn? What are your experience? Is Google Workspace also a productivity suite for well-established traditional companies?
Well, indeed, it is. It is. It wasn't, but that was because of the feature set. If you're looking at what has happened with Google Workspace the last 4 or 5 years, we've had all of the enterprise features added to the product. We've had so many enhancements to the end user experience, but on the security part, it has also been improved to a level where it is actually market leading, without a doubt. And what we have been doing in my previous role was really to do these kind of walkthroughs also for Danish banks and other banks outside Denmark. And they were really surprised about the ease of implementing the right security level, both on an end user, from an end user point of view, as we just discussed, but also on the tenant itself and on the security measures on that. The thing is also, and that's quite interesting, that we do see some parallel services coming to from Google right now. You've probably heard about the whole Beyond Corp security framework of Google that they
Mhm.
are rolling out these days, and that actually mitigates all of the rest aspects of the organizational security, from endpoint management to all the security things that would be normally on a network basis or in a network group or on a network advisor. That is actually incorporated now and working fluently with Google Workspace. And when we walk through that, even banks, they are nodding to this is actually an option. And we actually have seen one progressive, relative young but very fast growing Danish bank go Google Workspace this April.
Hmm.
So they are doing it, and of course, the customer I started to this interview mentioning is probably the fastest growing bank in the world right now, and they are only on Workspace. Yes, the answer is yes. They can rely on Google and the security of Google.
Very good. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about the Google Workspace landscape in maybe not only Denmark, but also the Scandinavian countries. As you
Mm.
mentioned before, you have been a reseller. So I'm guessing you know the economics there. Is this something widespread?
Well, it is gaining traction. It has actually been a very, very slow and poor start for Google in Scandinavia, but Scandinavia is well known also in Microsoft territory to be the Microsoft place of the world. Every company has been using Microsoft. There has been very little usage of other similar tools or even tools adapting to Microsoft. So throughout my 12 years as a reseller, we saw a very, very slow traction for the first 8 years. But for the last 4 years, it has actually increased, and the traction is really getting high on customers switching to Google, and that is for a number of reasons. First of all, the huge investment that Google has been doing across the world in educational solutions, and in actually trying to show new ways of collaboration and new ways of productivity to especially the youth in ground school, has really gotten Google to a place where now the millennials, they favor Google to
Mhm.
other compared to other solutions. And that means that we see a lot of young companies, a lot of startups, a lot of new founded companies, 2, 3, 4 years old. They are running Google as a preference, and that is also across Scandinavia, not just in Denmark. And what we also see is that now the CIOs from the first Google using companies, they're moving to new positions,
Mhm.
and that's both the CIOs and the CTOs, and that means that they're bringing in the idea of a new way of working. And the last thing is that actually we see that more and more millennials are entering C-level now in the larger organizations, and that actually means that there's an open mind. There's not a preference for things we used to do like this, but more to how can we improve our digitized game? How can we improve our collaboration, our productivity? And one of the things I've heard really often for the last 2 years is that bringing all users to a new complete solution where everybody has to start all over actually opens the door of everybody learning together and utilizing together. So you don't have that many people left behind. And that is actually one of the very good reasons we see for companies going Google in Scandinavia these days. And they are growing fast now in the market traction.
Yeah, I think Google did a lot right. Also, going into education because the war for talent is real. People are sought after, and if they come into companies and say, "But hey, but I'm used to, co-creating a document live no matter where we are working on a solution, and now I have to open up this Word document and I'm blocking it for all the others," that they won't be happy with that. So if you bring the young people into the workforce and they're used to Google Workspace, I think that's a huge, or that's a very smart strategic move, actually, in my
In,
opinion.
Indeed, and also because to that we see that the integrations to other third-party tools now is not just online, but actually to open APIs and open platforms that are integrated from the native solutions, and that means that some of the good reasons to stay on and use, for example, Microsoft is actually the dependency of co-working other systems and other integrations, and that is not possible in Google in the same way still for a number of solutions. But as we see new companies form and gain traction and grow, they can actually start on a whole new page with a set of tools that are easy to integrate and that can collaborate across any platform. That is also a benefit for the companies doing that. So it's not like I wouldn't advise any company to go Google, because there are good reasons to stay on the existing platforms, especially if you have a
Mhm.
strong legacy. But no doubt that the future is looking very green to Google and to Google Workspace.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I'm currently preparing a talk that I'm going to give for a German Google partner, and it's an agile, about agile working methods, and I'm going to give a talk about Google Workspace, and it's like I'm going to start at, it's almost the perfect productivity system, but there are reasons why it might not be the right fit for every single company, as you're saying. But I think for most of the companies, it will work out just well. And something else that I like with Google, kind of like, being now here on the scene and gaining traction, is innovation. Because, Microsoft has done a good job for a long, long time. But if you have no real competitor, there is no incentive to be innovative. And I have the feeling now, with Google being on the map, Microsoft is also like, oh, okay, we have to up in our game. We have to,
Mm,
get new ideas. So that's also the way I see it, and how I also try to explain it a little bit to the users in my training sessions, because I'm at the end of the line. I'm with the people who have to switch.
mm,
So the company says we're migrating, and the users are the one who have to say, okay, I'll forget about what I did in Word. Now I have to use Google Docs. So
mm.
I do sometimes feel there's pushback there. Um, Not always, but sometimes there is, because people, they're comfortable. They've been
Mm.
using these. Word is the same age as I am, so it's been around for almost 38 years. So people are used to it, and all of a sudden, you have to use Google Docs. So sometimes I
Indeed,
have to
yeah,
help
yeah,
them, to guide them to see the benefit.
yeah. I really do see, and one of the fun things here, and about that change is that also, this is not just a choice between Google Workspace and Microsoft. It's also a choice of, shouldn't the end users actually be graphical designers within PowerPoint and Word, and do they really need those features, or would they actually be better off with having somebody else doing it, or getting
Mhm.
an Adobe licenses, which is even wilder in its features and functions. So it's also a choice of how to use different tools and who are the best at making the specific tools. And I think we will see quite a shutdown of features at some of the competitors to Google in the future, because sometimes it's nice to focus. Sometimes it's nice to just select and concentrate on what you're really good at, and that's why you don't have a drawing program in Google.
True. And something else that I've been hearing from certain resellers is that some companies are switching back to Microsoft 365 to the online version or have that running, and it's not the same as Google. It. They also say kind of like browser first and everything, but it's not quite the same. Do you have some knowledge or some experience on that and comparing the online editors of Microsoft with the ones from Google?
Yeah. And that is definitely a problem. The thing is that if you look at Google just 4 years ago, it was not that attractive to large organizations.
Hmm.
There were only if shared drives was in the very first edition. A lot of the interaction in Google Workspace was what we used to call a little rustique.
Yeah.
That has really been improved for the last year, but it is only the last year that you have seen this whole integrated look and feel of Google Workspace, and you have seen almost daily you have features coming out, and now we are past the we got to match this. Now we are actually in the invention kind of rollouts from Google, but a lot of the companies have taken the decision to go back to Microsoft already a year or 2 years ago, but haven't been able to
Hmm.
because of long contracts and user change and all of that. But what we see is when customers are going back to Microsoft, they get the experience of, well, it's still the same because
Hmm.
Microsoft was not built to be an online product. That has been rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt throughout the period of 2013 until now, and that also means that I expect to see a lot of very, very powerful tools, online tools coming from Microsoft in the coming years. Because when you look at the rollout of Teams compared to the rollout of Office 365, as it was named then it's two different worlds. Because
Hmm.
the editors, online editors of Office 365 are supplementary to the Office package that you already have. It's not really. It wasn't meant to from the beginning to be standalone services and for only that use services. So I think we will see a lot of progress from Microsoft's side on equivalent to the rollout of Teams, which is a very very nice feature and set of features and a good service separately. We'll see that coming. But right now, Microsoft has to live with the legacy of actually having
Hmm.
been a platform that was on the desktop and not online.
And I'm wondering if Teams and also the apps that you're talking about that are probably in the making, if they would have been created if Google wouldn't have come up. I'm wondering if Microsoft would have said, "Hey, we need to change our ways. We need to be innovative," or if they would have just been happy with the status quo. I mean, this is probably something we will never know.
No, but I think it's very interesting that angle. And if we should be a little harsh to Google, I believe that they need to watch out for what is next, because what Google did a number of years ago, and you probably can't remember because you were not using Google at that time, but that was
Hmm.
something called Google Wave. And
Mm.
Google Wave was a complete feature set that should, in radical way, suppress email as something you used, and then you should work in waves instead. It was very visionary, and they
Okay.
completely failed at Google. It was only on the market for 1 year, and then it was withdrawn, and it was a huge failure. And it was a good failure because they learned a lot about online
Hmm.
collaboration by doing that project. So there were a lot of benefits coming out, but the project failed. And the thing is that what Google has been doing since then is doing a very, very, very good version of the productivity suite that we know in a new online and very easy collaborative way. But what if Wave actually was what was the smart future? And what
Hmm.
if someone comes up with that? What if
Yeah.
Slack they expand their feature set? A lot of large organizations are using more Slack than actually the productivity suite. When will email die, and what happens then? Which services will be best? Will some product flows some process flows be even more nice to have than the feature sets of Google. So I think that it can also be a pillow for Google to
Hmm.
get stuck in the success of making the next Office stack. What if we don't need an Office stack in 5 years' time?
Yeah, true. What if someone comes up with such a radical new idea or way of working, and something that I do remember not working out was Google Plus, which has been
Oh,
since
indeed.
relaunched as Google Currents, which is also it. Do you have any insight on that in your customers? Is that a feature that is
Yep.
used often?
Actually, it is used by one of the largest organizations in the world that we've been working a lot with in the UN, and they are actually very dependent on that product. And I think that we don't know what the future will be for current. I don't know,
Mhm.
and I have a lot of insights on the roadmaps of Google, but something will happen to that because it needs to work even better and as an integrated part for that set of functionality. But what we've seen that Google is doing is that they are trying to reinvent themselves these days. So the
Mhm.
features we've seen rolling out for the last 3 or 4 months are actually very innovative compared to what we've seen before. Just small things, nice bits and pieces. And you will probably ask me at some time, what is your favorite feature? And I will answer that question if it comes. But I can just say in this part that when I saw yesterday that they added that you very easily can do minutes in calendar meetings, that is actually something that really helps my organization because people are very bad at doing minutes and they're very bad at remembering looking at the minutes afterwards, even though they do them. So just fixing that small problem is really something that can give a lot of productivity for any organization. So
It's
yeah.
it's interesting that you mentioned that because I saw the same thing. I heard about it on Wednesday,
Mhm.
and I thought it's a little feature, but it adds so much benefits. It doesn't always have to be this huge, great new app. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
something within an existing app that you say, hey, this really boosts the productivity of our team. And I think that is a feature that I think they got it right. I have yet to test it, but
Yeah.
I think it will definitely make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And working with end users the way you do and teaching them and making them utilize the service so much, it is funny to see that these small bits and pieces, just adding the ad for a person's name, during
Mhm.
making the person aware of a document, of a spreadsheet, of a chat. It's just like these small bits and pieces. It brings so much productivity, but you need to know. You need to
Mhm.
teach
That's
all the
true.
end users. You need to do the things you're doing to organizations to actually to get that value. Yeah.
That's why I always also I mean, besides the corporate trainings that I give, which obviously are not online, I also really enjoy on this YouTube channel having the comments from people saying, "Wow, I didn't know about that feature. That's awesome."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they are intuitive tools, but you still need people to show you tips and tricks.
Yeah. And that's also why I know that you share my view on this one because we had not long ago we had a small talk about this with the larger organizations when they implement Google Workspace or re-implement Google Workspace, having ambassadors being progressive in the
Mhm.
organization, teaching others, giving insights, giving tips and tricks. It is so important to get the utilization up. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree on that.
Mhm.
So now
Mhm.
to the last couple of closing questions, and you already guessed it, absolutely correct. I want to know from you, which is your favorite Google Workspace tool?
Well, there's only one answer to that, and you will laugh. Search, of course.
Why?
Being able to search your stuff, getting insights, getting the right data, getting the right information across not just your own stuff, but
Mhm.
across the organization is so awesome. And it's the most boring answer because that was Google's foundation. I know. And if I've turned my camera, we even have one of the old Google Cloud Search servers that's not installed anymore for insights. So the thing is that the thing that you can find stuff in
Mhm.
Google Workspace is really what I love mostly about Workspace. But also, I must say that some of the new features and some of the improvements that Google has been doing for the last year of actually integrating the feel and look of Workspace. So you don't have to have that many open panes, that you can interact, that you can communicate within a document, that you can open a meeting fast, you can share information, you can bring conversations to chat instead of email, and it actually works. You can do groups and all these things, the whole collaborative feeling and the way it works. That is really what I love the most when I work with Google Workspace every day.
Okay, cool. And what would you say? What is the one thing in Google Workspace that you would change if you could?
Well, actually, but a year ago, that would have been integrate the solution more, make it more collaborative. But don't let me go in all sorts of directions, having three different ways of chatting and so on. So I'll say that improvement really took away a lot of my angriness in using the daily productivity suite of Workspace, because you get angry when you have to go odd, silly places to find or find information or do your work. But I will say that um, I think that they still need to make it even more simple to work and share data with people that are not using Gmail and not using Workspace, because it is a hard criteria to set that to work with other people they need to have a Gmail account. I know there's a lot of Gmail accounts out there, but it is a little odd to have that way. I know that you can share data and then you can send a pin code and all of that, but even extending that further would be nice. And then one thing I'm really missing, that is the full utilization of exactly search, because Google launched a couple of years ago Cloud Search. Cloud Search is the most overseen feature in all of Google Workspace. People don't
Okay.
know that they can go to the 9 small dots, find Google Cloud Search, and then you can search so beautifully across all of your data. But Google enabled that for even connecting to other data platforms, and not just new modern SaaS services, but also to legacy platforms. You can actually connect Cloud Search to your entire SharePoint environment, even though you have it on your own premises. And then you can
Mhm.
actually use Google Search within Google Workspace to search all of your information, all of your company information. I really believe they should push that forward. That they should make it even more easy to integrate and easy to use for both customers, IT departments, but also for end users. They should promote that much more.
Okay, so we have to make sure that Google listens to this interview somehow, huh?
Yeah, I hope, but I'm pretty confident that they are aware, and good
Mhm.
stuff will come within that. Another thing also is that, as you mentioned, currents, the whole internet, the whole interaction, and the especially the facilitation of remote workers having the same insights, sharing not just specific data, but overall company insights, overall uh, 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 information that you would not find from searching the system.
Mhm.
That would be an area I believe they could improve also.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Finn, for answering all of my easy but also difficult questions. It was really nice talking to you, as always. I do want to encourage the audience to check out Tricent.com if you're interested in getting to know the Tricent compliance tool. What are its features? And yeah, maybe get some insights by booking a demo. I highly can recommend it. Finn, as always,
Thank you.
it's a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, I hope to see you around soon. And also to the audience, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.